Hello and welcome. This is the Sophia Rothschild Show, and thank you for joining me again. So today I want to briefly talk about some of the misconception of slavery in America. Well, first and foremost, based on the evidence, there were, yes, black Americans that were slave owners. It's in numbers, such as there was William Ellison, a former slave. He was a former slave himself, but he became a wealthy cotton planter and owned dozens of slaves. There was Cyprian Richards, but I stand corrected. Cyprian Richard, a free man in Louisiana, who owned a large estate and a substantial number of enslaved laborers. There was Nat Butler, also enslaved. And also there was Anthony Johnson, another Black American who also, I think he did own a couple of European indentured servants, and he also owned slaves too. And to, to also remember, there was slavery in Africa for thousands of years before the Europeans came. The Arabs owned slaves. There were African tribes who owned slaves. And when Europeans came, the African tribes just sell their own African brothers and sisters to the European slave owners. So this is much more complicated than a white versus black issue. The problem is this makes the idea of reparation problematic and utter nonsense. There were Arabs who were slave owners. There were black African tribes that were slave owners for thousands of years. And in fact, the Africans sell their brothers and sisters to European slave owners. And there were, as just previously enunciated, there were numerous Black Americans that were also slave owners. Okay, so the issue of slavery is not that cut and dry. So it is instructive to note that one of the biggest problems in Africa over the decades has been corruption. African leaders are just looting the treasury and lining their pocket. And that's one of the biggest issues. Corruption and lack of good governance, which is something I will address in the near future. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me today. You have a good day.